Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. A few days ago I was going through one of my older videos, and it was basically about what I do to clear one of my air pistons that may have been semi-clogged, right? And as I was reviewing that video, I said, you know what, there's something that I need to share that happened to me years ago. That's really interesting that to share people who had these experiences like this. Okay, my story goes like this. It was about basically about 1980s, around that time. It's really a long time. My mom and I was on our way to Canada to visit my uncle for the first time. Now, this was the first time we ever traveled so far. We had been to Barbados, so those close Caribbean islands at that time. In case you don't know, I'm from Trinidad, and we were traveling. So my mom was traveling. Mom and I were traveling from Trinidad to Canada to visit my uncle. So the flight was going good and everything, and when the pilot said we were at about 33,000 feet in the air, right? And the pilot said, okay, when we are close to the airport, he said, okay, we're approaching the airport. We are now about to descend, right? And it was at that moment I realized I felt like sort of like a tension in my head, in my ears, started in my ears, and it just had to build, and around my temple started to build, and that thing built to extent that the pain in my ears was so bad. It was really bad. My whole head was like, I felt like my ears was going about to explode. I was in tears. I think my mom, she was experiencing the pain too as well, but she was so concerned with me as that that she was basically forgot about herself. But she couldn't do anything for me because it was the first time we experienced this thing, and we didn't know what was going on. So we tried to get some help from the flight attendant, but I didn't go anywhere. We didn't get any help with that. So eventually, that little time, those few minutes when the plane was descending, it was like the time was like in slow motion, and I was in this pain, like it wasn't going to go anywhere. I thought I was going to die, really, because I didn't know what was going on, like I said, right? Anyway, that passed, and as we came out of the aircraft, eventually I felt like a pop, and that tension, that pain, kind of eased up a bit. But my ears was sore, my head was like, still sore, and I was still in a bit of a pain. So when I told my uncle about what happened, he said, what you should have done was like chew chewing gum, get some gum and chew that, right? Or like blow and like kind of blow to get the air to pop in your ear. Those are different tips they were giving us and stuff. Drink water, try and swallow different things like that. So we said, okay, fine. So on our way back to Trinidad from Canada, it happened again. As we were descending, the aircraft was descending from to Trinidad airport. It began to happen again with the pain and everything. And we tried everything that we was suggested by my uncle, but it didn't work. Nothing worked. Nothing worked for us. At least for me, it didn't work, right? But the pain wasn't as bad as the first time, but it didn't work. So when I got back home, somebody told me that what I should try and do, like just put cotton in my ears. So I said, okay, I'll try anything because I want to have a good flight. I didn't really want the pain. Just thinking about the pain, I didn't want to travel. So on my next trip, a long distance trip, before the plane took off, what I did was I put the cotton in my ear and stuffed cotton in my ears, and the trip was fine. When the plane was about to land, I didn't have any major problem because the pressure was inside my ear. Nothing was, well, I don't know if I explained it properly, but there was no pressure to build up in my ear on the descent. That was kind of crazy. Anyway, hope you understand what I'm saying. So that went well. So, well, now of course I use earplugs if I have to, right? And I remember there was a time where I forgot to put in the earplug. So I was in the aircraft and everything, and it's only when it took off I said, oh my goodness, I forgot to put the cotton, and I had the cotton already in my bag, and I clean forgot to put it in my ears. So I said, okay, let me just put it in still anyway. That didn't work. So what happened is the pressure had already built up in my ears. So when I put the cotton in, I basically just blocked up that pressure in my ears already. So it didn't work like I said. So when the plane started to descend to approach the airport, I was in pain. But it was like the first time, but it was still bad enough. So what I do now, I make sure before they close that door for that plane, the cotton is already in my ear, or in like I said, these days now I'll put the earplugs in my ears, and to avoid that problem. So when I'm in that condition now, I can't speak to anybody because I can't really hear what they're saying, right? So I can't really speak. I'll more hear my voice in my eardrums, but I try to avoid speaking because I know the conversation will be kind of like halfway because I can hardly hear what anybody else is saying. But I just want to be comfortable and make sure I don't have these problems with the airplane anymore. So I make sure I have either the earplugs or whatever I have in my ears, so I know I'm good to go. Any like flights, if I fly like from around the Caribbean islands, if it's from Virgin Islands to maybe Trinidad and stuff and those other islands, I'm fine. But let's say I go, anytime the aircraft has to go really, really high, I'm in a problem. Well, of course, I know I'm going to have a problem, so I make sure I have my cotton or my earplugs in my bag. I make sure it's in my ears before that plane takes off. My children, they traveled from Trinidad to USA. That was about 2000, and for the first time. And I asked them, did you have any problems with your ears? Were you in any pain? And they said no, they had no problems. So I found it strange, but I was happy at the time because I know I don't really want anybody to experience that pain because it was really, really bad. And like I said, afterwards, even though the pain in the ear eased up a bit there, it takes you like an hour's for it to clear up and you get at ease because you'll find your ear will feel sore, you'll have like headaches. That will stay for a little while, and also feel like tension in the back of your neck, So I wouldn't like this for anybody else to experience this because it really, really is not nice. There was a flight that I was on where, there was a baby, and when the craft was about to land, the baby started to cry and cried and cried. And I felt that pain because I couldn't do anything, and I don't know if the parents knew what was going on, but I knew what was going on with the child because the child was fine before. Because as soon as the plane started to descend, the child started to cry, and the parents just tried to do different things, and nothing was working, and the child was crying more harder and harder. I felt so sorry for the baby, but I don't know. I was a distance from the people and them, so I didn't know what to tell them. I mean, I think at that time too I was experiencing some pain too as well, so I was in a little pain. And hearing the child crying too as well, I felt so sorry for the baby, because it's really not a nice experience, Really it's really not a nice experience, So I just wanted to share this with you today, what happened to me years ago and what I do to avoid it. For me, the only different things I have, people are talking about taking like different medical, like you sort of find different things like that, NyQuil, whatever, but I haven't tried those because I don't really travel overseas like that distance. So I haven't done that for a long time, so I don't really have need to. But the AirPods is working for me, so I will stick with that. I don't really have a problem with that. I will stick with that. But like again, I said, as long as if I don't do it before the door of that plane is closed, I am in trouble. So I make sure I'm trying to remember, extra effort to remember to put the earplugs in my ears before the door of that aircraft is closed and they take off, and I'll be fine. When they descend, I'll feel a little thing, but it wouldn't be as bad as if I didn't do anything. So that's, I want to share that with you today. And if you have anything to share with me, or share your experiences, or share any tips that you have for problems like this, let me know, and I'll be happy to read your comments and stuff, and and for your input. All right, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.